All right, everyone. Welcome once again to the Faces of Business. I am your host, Damon Pistolka, and I am excited for our guest today because we have Kelly Schaefbauer here with Aligned Operations. We're going to be talking about aligning people and process. Kelly, thank you for being here today.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, man. So, Kelly, we always like to start our guests off taking a trip down memory lane and kind of understanding how Kelly went from growing up in the Midwest to helping people and organizations get alignment so they can run their businesses better. So let's start back at your background and kind of how you got here today.
Yeah, it's a pretty common story I tell. It's classic. Got the entrepreneurial bug when I was in my 20s. I worked corporate America for a while, and I did enjoy that, but I could feel it just wasn't my happy place, and so I did a little bit of moonlighting and dabbling in the IT industry, and that led
Mm-hmm.
to me starting up a business around it. I had the classic E-Myth, entrepreneurial seizure. I decided that I can do it better. We have a lot of entrepreneurs in my family. My dad owned a restaurant, and I had several brothers that have owned businesses and so forth. So we have it in our blood. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, it was that exciting. Started it off and picked up a few clients here and there and had it grow. And it was something that I was passionate about. I felt fulfilled by it, but as it grew, my fulfillment grew to frustration and challenges. And I often liken it to when I describe my parenthood as, raising children is one of the best and worst things that can happen to a person. And
Yes.
I believe that was definitely the same thing with owning a business, where it was turned into, as it progressed, more of a, like I said, frustration. And it had that classic ceiling. We capped out about
Mm-hmm.
800K a year, and it was not a pleasant 800K a year. And I had a buddy who was an entrepreneur as well, who owned a website development company, and we started about the same time. And it was technology was just really getting going, and websites, and before we knew it, he was in the $2 million a year range, and he was buying a new Audi, and he was really
Mm-hmm.
enjoying. And I'm like, Eric, what the hell? What's going on? What's
Yeah.
different about it? And we really kind of looked at, he had a trusted management team. He had built that managerial layer, and he followed a few key people that he introduced me to, and it just clicked for me as far as really feeling passionate about that difference between an ownership of a business that's fulfilling and one that's frustrating. And I really wanted to dissect that out. I do have a science background. My degree is actually in biology, so I really like to unpack things and dissect it out.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, I got turned on to a management guru called Elliot Jocks. And there's a current, he's since passed, but there's a gentleman, Tom Foster, who's really been promoting his work. He has a great management blog, and I really took to that whole, it's a psychology based focus along with structure. It's all of that stuff that it's just not sexy.
Yeah.
But I really resonated with me. And I felt like this is the difference, and I really want to see how we can, or I can at the time, um, change that frustration to something that's more fulfilling through structure, right? Who would think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because you brought up a good point. There are different inflection points in a business life cycle. Yeah, even no matter how long it continues to grow and get larger, where you just run into it goes from fulfilling to frustrating because your systems or your people, your organization is not ready for the next where they have to go to
Right.
continue growing. And yeah, we run into that a lot where it can be, like you said, it can be $800,000 in some businesses. It can be 5 million in others. It can be 1 million in others. But you see the typical signs of people are really busy working super hard, but they don't have the things set up to be able to go farther because they don't see what's next and really what do we add tomorrow to go a little bit better and a little bit farther.
Yeah. And I've recently kind of come up with the thought and idea that entrepreneurs, especially startups that don't have a lot of experience in growing companies, they typically have a skill set. They're competent at doing something to fulfill a need. And this is kind of e-myth stuff. But they've also have a vision. They can see so they have that competency with some sort of producing a product or delivering a service. And they do see that they want to be part of building something or part of something greater that's their own. But they lack that managerial middle. They typically don't have those competencies around developing and building teams. And part of it's interpersonal, but it's also just the mechanics of management. What is the right structure, and all those things that, we talk about and we promote, and we now are developing tools around. Often it's like I said, it's not the sexy stuff, but it's stuff that does make such a difference. And it seems like we're trying to identify the barriers to that stuff. And what I'm talking about is, again, structure. What are the requirements of work, and we organize and break that down, and then document it, and then assign that work in role descriptions, train those people, developing performance monitoring with analytics, and then kind of start it all over again with continuous improvement. How do we evaluate and then improve the different parts of the whole to bring the whole thing up? But that's overwhelming, and people, especially documentation. I love that example. No one wants to document their stuff. But it's important, and it's a difference from those, companies that are wanting to evolve and grow beyond. Our sweet spot is 250K to $1 million. That's kind of the area where, if you can understand and embrace those practices, you're going to get through that period as you're building those first teams to make it back to pleasant, as you grow.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, we've got Deo here with us today. Hello, Deo. We got Andrew coming in from California and Erica coming in from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil.
Wow.
So thanks for being here today, guys. So let's get started. So you kind of got into the whole aligning people and processes out of pure frustration, it sounds like.
Well, and I should correct you a little bit. Our tagline, it process is part of it, but we align people and purpose.
People and purpose. There we go.
Yeah. So it's really about, those mechanisms. Process is part of what we do to align that. It's the structure part of it, and how we break it down on one end, from the purpose. We start with the purpose, and then we define the requirements. We no longer use the word goals anymore. We go from what's your purpose, and then what's going to be required for you to materialize that organization to fulfill that purpose. Then from there, once we have the structure, we can flip it around to the people. We now know the requirements into a structure. We do something called a task inventory, where we will go through every aspect and function of the business and break it down into a unit of work called the task. We organize that in our system, and now we start applying that to the right people. Now we have a way of aligning those people's competencies back through the task inventory into the structure and then to the purpose.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And when you and I met before, we went through your process and how you guys do it. And I think it's really beneficial, even if your business is, like you say, going to scale past this. I mean, to set up this foundation at that size in your business, whether it's going no further in size or whether it's going quintupling or farther, this is going to help you in the long run, because you're going to make sure that we've identified what we need to do and who's going to do it.
Yeah. And it's part of that iterative process. I say requirements, the requirements to just get you to the next step, but that's going to change and evolve as you're going down the road. We always talk about now, next, later. We take an inventory just to see what's happening today. That's the first thing when we get involved in a business is
now, next, later.
No future. What we're going to inventory how you're doing things right now. And at least that creates a basis for us to kind of see what's going on and what's working, what's not. I'm a fan of the theory of constraints, where you can look at what's happening and see what are your barriers, your bottlenecks. And then next is your plan. What's going to get you to the next part in the context of the later, the big vision part of it. So we're going to kind of start there, take your inventory, and then kind of iterate back along the way to see what makes sense with your, of course, small businesses, especially have limited resources.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we got to really be smart about where we're going to apply that for the next part of this thing. And again, we bring it back to that development of the management team of who's going to take responsibility. And that's one thing we coach into the managers is to do your own theory of constraints or your constraint analysis just right within your department. But when we have that task inventory, we can do that a little bit easier. We have context.
Yeah. And for people that aren't familiar with the theory of constraints, it's from a real basic explanation of it is if you got a business and consider a business like a big pipe, and you've got a small piece of pipe in that big pipe as your business, that's your constraint in your business. And if you can find that in any area of your business and expand it so the capacity is more, theoretically things can flow better. So I've always liked the water theory around the explanation of that because it's so simple to do. And go ahead. Sorry.
There's a great book out called The Goal. I can't remember the author's name. They use a Boy Scout troop analogy that I think is awesome as well. The group, if they're holding on to a rope, can only go as fast as the slowest guy, right?
Yes.
So you want to fix that slow guy. And then we can all move along a little bit faster. But that's a whole nother, we've brought some of that into when we talk about performance evaluation using analytics. We then apply those analytics to understand our shortfalls or constraints, what tasks or functions aren't meeting our benchmarks and are holding back the rest of a department.
So as you're doing this with people and you're aligning people, purpose, and really ironing out the organization from a systems standpoint, or at least documenting what they're doing and the tasks they're doing, what are some of the things that show up that people go, oh my goodness, I didn't realize this?
It's interesting. Right now I've been working a lot I'm not an accountant, but I've been getting involved a lot in finance. And it's amazing to me how a business owner, and I mentioned before, we're working with some nonprofits, how they're just unaware of their cash or their spending or their financial picture or health. And so, one of the things that we do get involved in is, again, back to requirements. What should you be looking at, and then breaking down how you're going to get there, from a function and a process. I'm drawn to bookkeeping, and I'm not an accountant, but it's so heavy process that I can't help myself. I love to get in there and improve from an efficiency standpoint, but also more importantly, accuracy and timely data when it comes to finances. Again, small businesses have limited funds. You really have to know that you're using them in the best possible way in that organization's iteration, right? So that's an area where I'm really seeing a lack of understanding with that. The other, just in a general terms, it's interesting as we start doing the task inventory where there really isn't a knowledge about what work the frontline people are doing within departments. They're just kind of the business owners or some of the leadership team, they're stressed out. They feel like we just need to add more bodies. So they throw people at it with a general guide of what they should be doing. And this speaks to that whole lack of training.
Yeah.
And they're just kind of figuring it out. And so, we do run into this realization that, a lot of the managers don't really know how people are doing the work. And so it is a little bit of when we come in, we used to call it an audit, and now we changed it to inventory just because it's a little lighter.
Yeah.
No department manager wants to have their department audited.
Yeah.
But we turn it into a fun inventory,
Yeah.
And that brings to light, I think we do it in a pretty productive, non-judgmental way. I think there's often this mind, even the business owners, there is a little bit of an ego there that they're could get exposed for the lack of doing things in a requisite way. But it's a part of the process. We're just here to just see where you're at today.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, when you approach and done this before, you'll talk to somebody about their business. No, we don't do that. I'm so embarrassed, blah, 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 blah. Well, listen, there's a lot of things, like you said before. You only have so many hours in the day to run a business, and your skills are in one place, and that might be in another. There's a million different reasons why certain things don't get done in the business. But as you said, most people don't go into business because they're good at business. They go into it because they're good at something. And that's great in the beginning because they can see something, and they can see an opportunity because of their experience in an industry, and then see that there's an opportunity to make money. But they don't necessarily have all the skills to set up everything in a business. And that's where I think you guys are helping a lot by identifying tasks, who's doing what, and then who's now and who should be doing it, and how do they need to be trained? Because you hit something there when you said they don't really know what frontline people are doing, and the frontline people just have to figure it out. This is what I see when we talk about people quitting and turnover and all kinds of things, not knowing what I'm supposed to be doing on a daily basis, or what success looks like for me on a daily basis, is killing a lot of companies, because they'll hire somebody new that wants to know what they're supposed to do, wants to know, their task list for the day. And if you can't explain that very good or at all, and then you have very little or no training, people are going to get frustrated and leave.
For that matter, then,
or support.
There's a lack of understanding of responsibilities and how work should get done, and then a lack of support. We talk about what we're trying to fight is confusion, doubt, and drama.
There we go.
That's we believe our systems and our solutions provide the clarity that builds confident teams you can trust. And so if you don't have that clarity coming through from a manager, that's an awful workplace to be in. I back a few years ago, I got introduced to Simon Sinek, and just love his work around workplace fulfillment and happiness. And, I believe that there's nothing better than, doing a job well. And I think that's part of the manager's role. We simplify it as the manager's role is to develop the process to the requirements that are presented to them, guide their people into it through training and education, and then support the shit out of them when they need it. Be there for them, keep them coming along. It can be frustrating. I've been part of transition where you're brought in where that person that was training you left, and there's no one else in the whole company that knows how to do what you're supposed to be doing. It's not a pleasant place to be.
No.
And I think everybody has a story like that.
Well, yeah. I mean, and you see this in organizations, and especially even I'm not even saying small organizations. I back that up because there's some organizations that get large just because they can hire quality technical
Absolutely.
people, and they figure things out on their own. But really, to scale companies effectively, the ones that have figured it out make it clear enough so that if I'm coming in to do role A, that it's documented well enough, there's the training is clear enough that if someone has the basic skills they need, they can learn how to do that from the
Yeah.
training and the documentation that they have. And the companies that simply don't have that have to fall back on people that will take the time to figure it out, to do it the way they think they should do it.
Yeah.
And you see companies like this all the time. You can be successful like that by having a bunch of people that figure things out and just do it the way they think they should. But to get, like you said, consistently getting all the work done that's supposed to get done and in a process that you can consistently measure, it's very difficult when you don't have things defined.
Yeah. There's of course those diamonds in a rough, those
Mm-hmm.
people that are just great at figuring out. I believe that was me back when I was getting my business going, and
Mm-hmm.
and so I had the mistake then as a business owner thinking that my people I hired would be able to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So, and I think business owners that have that natural aptitude to work hard and figure things out and be independent, my thing nowadays is why I want to be ensure that that work is going to get done to the benchmark we've talked about,
Yeah.
in order to bring the organization along. I love though bringing those frontline people in as part of the improvement conversation to get
Yes.
their input, so they can be part of making it better, but it is the manager's responsibility
Yeah.
to dictate really what is the process here. They're supposed to be the expert in whatever that department, whether it's finance, tech, HR,
Yeah.
whatever your service delivery is. There's they should be the experts in a way that they're the ones dictating process, and the other part of their leadership in that management role is escalation of issues. When
Mm-hmm.
problems come up, they're really effective at bringing that team in to problem solve. They're not
Yes.
going to just give the answers, but they're going to help coach through that problem solving process to get those things resolved.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. Well, we've got Pamela Clark here showing up from Detroit, sunny Detroit. We've got Abdullah here in co-founder of Mango Shango. Glad to have you here. T. Higgins is here with us today. Yep. A lot of employees
Yeah.
heading towards companies with a purpose. There's no doubt about that. And my friend James Kunkel is here, fellow livecaster, broad podcaster in the coatings industry. If you, he had an article, I don't know if it was a recent article or one I just saw over the weekend. I mean, you never think about all the things that have coatings until you go and look at James's stuff, because he was talking about coatings for biofuels containers. And I'm like, yep,
Well,
I'm sure.
yeah,
I know you have to have stuff for that. And
absolutely. I love specialized businesses.
oh
It's
yeah,
great. Yeah, there's some little niche for everything, right?
yes, yes. And it's so interesting. And hearing you talk about this, I mean, when we're talking about these other kind of businesses, when you get into a business and you start helping aligning these people and the purpose, and they understand and get them through this process, or at least to a more advanced state in the process, what are some of the things that people tell you after they've gone through and really things start to work on the backside of trying to implement these, align the people, the purpose in their
Yeah.
in the process?
We're trying to find. I've heard the term being liberated come out sometimes. I think especially managers that may, or business owners that may not have the best relationship with managers, and
Mm-hmm.
managers afraid to speak out about what's wrong in their departments. As we go through, we do an alignment that's kind of our full version of it is where we're working with a management team, and we'll
Mm-hmm.
provide some instruction about the whole implementation of our solution. It's both method, but it's also, we have a software solution called Trellis Tools, where we're going to give them some concepts and methodology, and then we show them and give them an assignment on the tool. And so, like I said, the first one is that task inventory, where we're just telling them, let's break down all the requirements, the work that happens in your department into a unit of a task, and we organize those into functions, and those functions are what make up a department. And then we bring that hierarchy up. Departments we fill up into business units, and then you have the organization. But often, as they're going through this exercise of getting everything on the table, right, and just laying it all out there, and a lot of times a business owner will be like, I never knew you guys did this much. The next step, once we have that task inventory, is we don't go into documentation right away. We start assigning it, and we leverage off that task inventory to create role descriptions. We had a manager for a winery here in Minnesota. Yes, Minnesota has wineries.
Yes, they do.
And I love the Minnesota wine. But there was a manager there. Her role description became 5 pages long.
Oh my.
It was crazy. And the business owner was like, I had no idea, because she was doing not only the management work, but she was being leveraged as backup for every other part of the business. Whether it was working in the winery, she'd be there on weekends bottling, or she would be working the front tasting room, or helping with the event center. She was part of and capable of participating in all of those different areas. And we found out she was working herself to death. She was there all weekend long, helping out with the tasting room, and all week during, and harvest, they're out harvesting. Yeah. And so they were just like, wow, we didn't know. And it was really a call to action to really look at, yes, she needs to be aware as the manager, but she shouldn't be the backup to everybody. And so that's something that comes out as part of the role descriptions. And then the documentation piece, we leverage off that same task inventory as your documentation library, as we have it built into that structure of functions and departments and so forth. What we find there is, as we get the team of that department talking about how work gets done, we usually get 2 or 3 different versions of how it's getting done. So that conversation is really enlightening, as well, as far as, what's the best way now? We've identified people are doing a little bit of different, but I think, for consistency, we all want it done within that department the same way. But then we can have a conversation about those 3 different ways. If it's a good manager, you're brainstorming to say, why are you doing that this way? And, let's talk about, maybe we'll bring in parts of each of these different ways to create the best way for a function overall.
I think that's so key, because and again, if someone's listening to this in business now, don't feel like you're alone. I mean, the vast majority of businesses under $20 million have, let's be honest, crappy documentation for process for people.
Why do you think that is? Why don't? Why
because does it in the beginning? Do you make money by documenting things? No. I think that is the core thing all the way throughout, is because you don't make money doing it. You make money by selling your product or service. You make money by helping customers. You make money by doing that, and everybody's so focused on it. But it is one of the things that will allow you to continue helping people better and longer if you implement it, because it does it enhances the scalability and delivery of your products and services so much. And, but it's not in the direct line in the beginning.
We talk about solopreneurs and, in startups that are, a business owner or a partnership. And, people have asked, would our solutions or our services be a good solution for them? Of course I say yes. I believe there's a version of what we're doing that doesn't have to be this huge administrative overhead. We talk about 7 levels of documentation within an organization. we talk about that task inventory. When we do that task inventory, we're not talking about how that work gets done. We're just identifying it as a requirement of a function within a department. I would say at least get that part in this. So at least you have a basis and you have an understanding of all of the different aspects and requirements of work in that organization. Then if you want to, the next step under tasks is steps. So we quickly just off the top of your head, give me the steps. How does this get done? Don't get into the granular, click this, open that, enter this value. Just give me the quick steps. And now we can populate that very quickly and easily. So we're trying to come up with ways to get some of these practices, we call them managerial leadership practices, for people to do them. That's why we created the app. It's one of those things that we're trying to get the value is so large when you're trying to, like you said, grow and scale, but there's this mental block that it's just not worth the time, or I think people lack a methodology that makes sense for them and their teams to get that work done.
Yeah, I think you're right too. You hit on it. I think people look at it as a daunting task, and it's something there's not a lot of methodology around it, excuse me, about structured process that people go, oh yeah, this is a structured process we use, like whatever. And so they look at it, this huge task that they don't know how to start. Yeah. And that probably holds a lot of them back as it is, but it really is when you've got a structured way, like you're helping people to, this, we start here, go here, go here, go here. And when you're led through the process, people realize it's not as ugly as it seems. Yeah. And you discover so much though. And you talk about this too, in like lean or other manufacturing type things, when you start to look at a process, and in detailed steps, you really understand that a lot of the work that we do is unnecessary, or it's not really doing what we want. And I think you guys probably uncover a lot of that when you're in those situations.
For sure. And I'm with a company I'm working with right now where there's a whole lot of, we're like, because there was a lot of turnover. So I'm dealing with the people that are there now. And we are going through this stuff, and it's like, I'm not connecting the dots. I love that. I use that all the time. You have to connect the dots on here. Why is this happening like this? And they're just like, I don't know. And then we talk to there's some process that connects departments. Yes. So they just figured somebody on the other department on the other end needed that. Well, then we go and talk to them, and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. So there is that happening all the time, as far as just doing it because that's the way it's been done. But again, I think you have to start changing the managers' mindsets to be about innovation. And we use the term continuous improvement. Again, as an annual exercise that's done as a management team. So we really hold in high regard if you're part of a company's management team, that's an honor. You should feel that. And then there's requirements to it. And one of them is we do an annual strategic planning process where we reevaluate your department's functions with that theory of constraints, or that methodology to improve through constraints. And then it keeps that fresh. Where we're continually going to look at it, at least in a 12-month cycle, if we need to keep that process or improve it or replace it. So especially with the way technology moves so fast, I'm like I said, I love bookkeeping as an example for this stuff, and I use QuickBooks Online. People love it, hate it, versus desktop, all of this. But QuickBooks Online, some of the automation that's happening with it, I think is fantastic. And it's kind of changing the way people are bookkeeping, I think. And I think more of that's coming. It's starting to utilize a little bit of AI. So it's looking at transactions or receipts and trying to decide how it should be done. So I think with technology, that keeping fresh what's happening, especially in service delivery as well.
Yeah.
I think, managers have to look at their industry and be industry experts as part of that service delivery.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially, yeah, when you're looking at the way that, just like you said, AI and other things are changing customer service, changing, even simple scheduling of
Yeah.
service, and allowing, more self-serve options in a business, and how that can really help
Yeah.
your business deliver more satisfaction to the end customers. There's so much of that continuous look at how you're doing things,
Yeah.
and really understanding what is my customer value, and how can we give them more of that, and how can we do that and be more efficient in delivering
Yeah.
whatever we're delivering. There's so many opportunities in that for those managers that you said that develop that continuous improvement mindset, because there is gold in almost every business. I'm sure there's some there's not.
Yeah.
If the managers take that mindset and really understand how they can get their customers more, and be more efficient overall.
Yeah. Zoom has changed absolutely the way that we service our clients.
Yeah.
We do a thing called a show and tell, where we will sit down with a department manager and members of their team, and we start the recording going, and we just say, show us what you do. We don't we don't take notes. We're just asking clarifying questions, and just their screen is showing. And then we send that up to one of our analysts, and they document it, for them, just based on that recording. It's awesome. We really realize that documentation will get done if the person who does the work doesn't have to do the documentation.
There you go. That is the mic drop moment right there. That is a mic drop from a documentation will get done if the person doing the work doesn't have to do the document.
Yeah. So we record it.
Key.
Yeah. We record. We're even doing where it's more of a physical job, where they're out. Yeah. We'll come out with a camcorder and record it, and then we'll go back and watch and replay things. And it's great with Zoom with more information workers. It's fantastic for doing that. It's like I said, it's really allowed us to really have this or someone on your team or your manager can do the same thing with their team members, to just use Zoom and record. I record every one of our meetings, every one of our client meetings. We do status update meetings. I think recording and being able to go back and reference is fantastic technology.
Yeah. Yeah. And even with some of the AI transcription tools now too, it can help to, if you're asking the right questions, it'll write a lot of it for you.
For sure. Yep.
Yeah. Cool stuff. So what are some of the exciting things that you're seeing now in business and technology, that when you're talking about aligning people and purpose and process and really giving them the tools to scale?
Yeah. It's one of our focuses lately has been beyond really to connect what we do to an engagement and a positive experience for the workforce. I really feel like we've really connected with the coaching community, where we talk about competency is really 3 elements to competency: knowledge, skill, in that engagement piece, their experience. What's their mindset? What's their state of mind in that workplace? Is it one of fulfillment, or is it one of frustration? We're great at the knowledge and skill requirements from our task inventory, but there is that piece that we're not good at, but we're really trying to connect with a coaching community where they're good at understanding things like conflict resolution and, being supportive and kind of more of that interpersonal skills. We really want to connect to that world, because I think if you can bring that whole knowledge, skill development with somebody who's really has the right frame of mind in the workplace, that's golden. It's good for everybody, really. It's good for that person. It's good for that manager, and it's really good for business owners, to have that sort of positive mentality. And again, that's why that's not us, but we're really making an effort lately to partner with good coaches that understand strengths. I love the strengths finder stuff, the Gallup
Mm-hmm.
strengths. I've really bought into that. That's kind of really where I used to be thinking, if you're good at our stuff, you don't need coaches. You don't need that
Yeah.
stuff. But now I'm really realizing it's really about that whole person and their well-being. But it does
Yeah.
start with clarity, with they know their responsibilities, their requirements. They're trained on it. So that's where we feel our value is. But there's always going to be conflict, and there's going to be, a right way to interact with people in language, that sort of thing. And that's just not us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're staying in your skill set and in your area of expertise and addressing the whole person by bringing others in when it's appropriate. That's cool. That's cool. Well, Kelly, it's been awesome to get to talk to you today and just hearing you speak about, I really like the way that you guys are helping people and we didn't talk about your Trellis software that you guys have developed with an app where you just go from tasks to, rolling it up and then your training element behind it. So much good there to really help get these businesses ready to, like you said, go from frustration to fulfilling for the owners and the people working there. So if people want to get a hold of you, Kelly, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
We did actually go through a name change. We were aligned operations. Operations is a very confusing word we found. And we're really more about management. So we're now Aligned Management Partners. We're alignedmanagementpartners.com on our website. I'm easy to find. There's not a lot of Kelly Schaefbauers out there on LinkedIn. So, I'm 100% German, born on St. Patrick's Day. So that's why.
All right.
Yep. So, that's usually the easiest is for me on LinkedIn, and we can go from there.
Yeah. So your website is, again, I want to one more time get that, Aligned Management Partners or alignedoperations.com. alignedoperations.com.
Yep. And Trellis Tools is a separate company that I'm a partner in that's developing the app that really makes a lot of these practices more straightforward. It helps that facilitation of those things. That's really part of our mission, is if we make it easier for people, they're more likely to do it.
Yep. And that is trellistools.com as well. So alignedoperations.com and trellistools.com, or reach out to Kelly Schaefbauer on LinkedIn and directly. Kelly, thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely. My pleasure. It was fun.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome getting to talk to you. And thanks everyone for being here today. I really appreciate the comments, and those of you that didn't comment, thanks for listening. And if you got any questions for Kelly, like I said, reach out on LinkedIn and talk to him, and we will be back again next week. Have a great weekend, everyone. Kelly, hang out for just a moment.